What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to talk about what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what the news is saying about the markets, what's happening with the economic data coming out for today, what you should be watching for when it comes to other big headlines coming out for Tesla. But before I break the devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moo and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, looking at the technicals right now, we do still have this accumulation schematic that is valid, but the issue for Tesla is the fact that we're getting hit with lots of negative news that's causing it to slow down a bit. So is it possible for Tesla to run approaching its earnings? It still is on the table. I still think Tesla has potential to do so. You want to be very careful with Tesla because we're getting some very negative headlines from analysts. And I want to break down what they are in just a couple of minutes, and it's negatively affecting Tesla for now. But we're going to be watching how well these supports hold. As long as they hold up nicely, Tesla could bounce and try to rebound later. If they end up breaking, then my view could change on Tesla. So you want to be very careful. So I'll be breaking down more details about Tesla in just a few minutes. Let's first go over some data and such. So for the whole market, guys, at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, if the CB leading index month over month coming out, you want this to be at a drop of 0.3%. That's what the consensus and forecast happened to be. So at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 30 minutes after market open, watch for volatility. And also at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time today, the 3-month and 6-month bill auctions are coming out. Watch for volatility at that time as well. Besides that, all the data is very minor. Now, when it comes to earnings for Monday, you guys can see Monday right here. We have the Bank of Hawaii, which just came out, and then we also have United, Logitech, and a couple of others after market close. For Tuesday, as a reminder, we have Verizon, Netflix, and just a few others. And then Wednesday is going to be the most important day as we have Tesla and IBM announcing their earnings. Tesla is going to be very important for Wednesday. Make sure you're prepared for that. Now, when it comes to other things affecting the markets, we just made new all-time highs in the pre-market. In my previous video, I said the market could push more. We did push more in the pre-market, but the market is fighting some tough resistance, and you want to be very careful, especially when we open. A lot of big earnings are coming out, and on top of this, Macy's has rejected a $5.8 billion acquisition proposal from Ark House Management. That's very important. This is especially evident after they cut about 3.5% of their workforce, and they're closing about 5 stores. So there are hardships hurting them, but they've rejected a buyout thus far. Sports Illustrated is also at risk right now as they ended up failing to pay their licensing fees to its owners. That's actually some big news that came out, a little bit negative for them. We're starting to see some hardships for some retailers and other businesses out there. Google also announced they're going to be cutting jobs. This is what you tend to see as we approach a recession that is still on the table. And you have to be very, very careful now because, the market's still at these all-time highs, but in the upcoming months, always be careful. Anyways, when it comes to Tesla, we had some negative news, unfortunately, guys. The news has come out that a Tesla stock bull has cut their price targets ahead of earnings. And that's a little bit negative. So Morgan Stanley analyst Adam Jonas, who's a very well-known, very notorious, very, very famous, he cut his Tesla price target to 345 down from 380. But he kept his overweight rating on the shares. He's a long-time Tesla bull. He expects Tesla's 2024 volume and probability outlook to be modest when it announces its fourth quarter earnings. He doesn't think earnings will be that strong, and that's why he's changing his view. He also mentioned, and I quote, global EV momentum is stalling. The market is oversupplied versus demand, according to Jonas. So he's saying that his price target, he's still bullish on Tesla basically, but his price target has dropped from 345. It used to be 380. This is a little bit negative for Tesla. He also mentioned that there's several pieces of evidence that supply is growing while demand is slowing. And he mentioned implicitly that the recession and the economic impact right now is going to negatively affect Tesla. He also mentioned that he gave it potentially a 75 per share, basically around 22% of the 345 price target. He also mentioned the FSD is still very, very bullish, at least for the long term, and other things like that. So that's very important. But his change in view and his price cut is a little bit negative for Tesla. On top of this, Panasonic holds an idea for the third US plant for Tesla batteries, a little bit negative. Basically, Panasonic, makers of batteries for Tesla in the US, is delaying its plan to build a third battery plant in North America. This is very important. It turns down nearly $700 million in state incentives to build in Oklahoma. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're giving up on it, at least for now. This could just be a big change, just a delay for the location, which is a little bit negative for Tesla, but it's not the end of the world. But this could be a little bit negative for the share price, as once again, we don't really like pieces of news like this. And with it holding off on building a third plant, at least for the time being, this could once again lead to some more negative outcomes for Tesla. So I want to be a little bit careful with this bad news that's coming out. If you look at the top battery producers in the world, right, you could see, I think there was a chart here. I don't know what happened to it. There was a chart here somewhere. I was actually looking at. There it is. It basically shows you some of the top producers overall. And you can see that Panasonic makes up 8% of the market share, whereas Tesla makes up 15%. So getting that partnership, that control for Tesla is going to be evident and key for them. You want to see them pretty much get more and more of a view and a bigger control over this. So that's going to be very important for them. This could help Tesla increase its overall market share in that, especially thanks to Panasonic. So we'll see how that goes. Besides that, now let's just talk about what's going on with Tesla's share price. In order for Tesla to continue to grow, and in terms of its share price, you want to see this thing hold to 212. If we do bounce off of this, there's minor resistance at 214. It's not that crazy. 216 is the most important level. This is where we have this imbalance. If we can break above this and maintain good volume and such, we could be pushing all the way up to 220 if we do break that level. Now, that's the bullish case. The bearish case would be if Tesla ends up losing 212, you're going to be watching some minor support at 210 and eventually 207 to 208, like down here. If we lose this lower end of testing this low, you want to be very careful. We have to try to hold above this 208 range. If we lose this low right here, Tesla's going to collapse and come all the way down to 205 and eventually get very close to the low 200s if we lose support there. So it's going to be very bearish if we lose the lows we made on Friday. So what do I think it's going to do? Right now, it's kind of chomping in this 212 area. I would say just watch it very carefully. Now, is it possible for Tesla to rebound and push approaching its earnings? Historically, that's what Tesla tends to do. But here's the issue: Tesla's just getting hit with negative headline after negative headline. Panasonic delaying battery production plans that could be built soon. Not to mention the price cuts that came for Tesla. So this is very negative. So it's negatively affecting Tesla. We gapped up. We tried to push up, then we came back down, unfortunately, and now we're just stalling right here. So the best thing I would tell you is just watch and see how we hold around these levels. With the market potentially cooling off a bit, we might see Tesla end up cooling off a little bit lower, but you want to be very careful to see if support holds. As long as it could hold above 208, we're going to be fine. Tesla still has the potential to try to rebound. But if we end up just chopping down here, if we even lose 208, there's going to be a risk to more downside on Tesla, a much bigger risk. So you want to be very careful, watch and see how it holds. There's this nice white cuff accumulation. We got this bullish divergence, which has technically led to a balance. We did push up to almost the 215s. So we got a small bounce thanks to that, but it wasn't really enough for Tesla to really rebound. So we'll watch and see how it reacts. Watch 212 very carefully. As far as SPY goes, SPY is turning, unfortunately. I'm going to be watching some key resistance levels on SPY. So in my previous video, I said SPY has more upside potential. If you look at this, we gapped up this morning. We actually reached 484, and we're going to gap up very close to 484. We came very close to 485, actually. Just under 485, we have this resistance. But you want to be careful because when I look at SPY, if I look at the 30 minutes time frame, you can see SPY starting to turn a little bit. And we have this gap down below. We have this big gap down the 482s. There's going to be a risk of it coming down if we end up losing support. So if we're bullish, you want to see this thing break above 484.5 to 485. Get above the 485s. Our next target is going to be 486. And if we break that, there's 487.5 coming. If we're bullish, if we're bearish, you want to see this thing basically just start downtrending, start a downtrend and lose 483. If we lose that, we're going to fill our gap in the 482s and potentially come back down to 481.36. Okay, which side do I favor? In my opinion, it looks like it might come down to fill this gap at least to 482, and then it might shop around a little bit. So I could see a small little drop coming, but we're going to be watching it very carefully at these levels just to be safe. The QQQ is showing the same thing essentially because I said the QQQ could pump more towards 425. We actually reached 424.8, so it came just short of that during the pre-market. So yes, we did get a more upside. The market was not done pumping. That is what I foresaw yesterday, and that is what's panned out so far as the market's gapping up. but be very careful because the QQQ is turning on the 30 minutes time frame. So if we're bullish, you want to break 425. So you want to get above this high from 424.8 to 425 and start pushing for 427 next. If we're bearish, you want to see it basically lose this low. It already lost this pre-market low. It's barely holding right here at 423. If we lose that, we're going to be coming back down to about the very high 421s, which is where we have the gap. It's basically 422. Basically, we're going to come down to 422, if not 421. This 421 to 422 range is coming next if we end up breaking down. If we lose 421, our next target is 420. We have to hold 420 or else we're going to be sinking to lower levels like 418 and 416. So it looks like it's a little bit bearish. We're fighting resistance up here. We might come down to fill this gap, so watch that very carefully. This could be a little bit negative for the markets. This may lead to some downwards momentum. Nvidia, I said 600 is coming. What did we do? We hit 600. We're actually at 599.8 right now. 600 to 602 are going to be resistance. To be bullish, you want to break 602 plus. Our next target is going to be 605, 607, and 610. If we're bearish, you want to see this thing lose 597. If we lose that, we're going to be sinking back down to the 594s and eventually 592. And also like 590 and below that. So on Nvidia, it's chopping around 599 to 600. It's just barely fighting 600. If it turns, we could be coming back down to fill this gap, so be a little bit careful with that. And finally, for Apple stock, it's the same thing. I said Apple may pump more. We did pump more. We actually came very close to about 193, but Apple has this big gap below down here at 191. If we lose 192, watch it come down to the 191s and eventually 190.5. If we're bullish, you want to see it break 192.75. If we break that, our next target is 193.5, then eventually 195. We haven't completed the full measured move for the double bottom yet. We haven't completed this yet, but we could attempt to do so later on, even if we do get a small rejection for now. So for the market, it looks like the market may reject. There is some risk of some downside now. We did gap up and push higher already during the pre-market as predicted, but now the market may retrace just a little bit. So watch that very carefully, especially for Tesla, and see how Tesla holds 212. Let's see if Tesla holds its key support or not, guys. Be very careful with Tesla. Typically, it does uptrend approaching its earnings. There's potential for it to do so, but watch and see just to be safe, because the issue with Tesla is just so much bad news that's coming out. So do what you have to do, guys. I'm going to upload this video as fast as I can, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you for listening, and peace out.